Welcome to So Very Easy. My name is Laura, and if you've been following along with the block of the month called Rainbow Sorbet, well, it's time for block number 9. This has been a free follow along quilt pattern from Quilting Confections, and I'll put a link in the description so you can download the patterns and follow along. Block 9 starts the third row. All the blocks are 12-inch blocks, which mean they start at 12.5 inches and they're finished at 12 inches. And this month's block have the beautiful mauves, purples, and a really fun print. We're continuing the background fabric of this tone-on-tone white. And the second color variation I'm doing is a scrappy variation. I start with my background fabric in this big floral print, and then I'm pulling in all sorts of different colors, so I never know what the block is going to look like. For the background fabric, we need 16 squares at 2.5 inches. Fabric A, which is this really fun polka dot fabric, we're going to need one 4.5-inch square and two 5.5-inch squares. Fabric B, which is a little bit darker, is 2.5 inches by 4.5 inches. And C, the light mauve, 2 squares at 5.5 inches. We need to make 8 flying geese units. We will be using the B fabric and the background squares. When you make flying geese blocks, what size they start off with, they end up with. For example, this is a 2.5 inch by 4.5 inch. It's going to remain that size even after we sew on the corners. The corners are 2.5 inches. We'll start on one side and then we're going to do the second side. It won't matter what side you start on, it's whatever you're comfortable doing. We need to stitch from corner to corner using that top square as a guide. There are many ways to make them, but I find it's easiest if you draw a line from corner to corner. And when you get to the machine, you're not going to stitch on that line, you're going to stitch right beside it. By stitching right beside it, you're leaving just a little bit of space for the threads, so when this block is turned over, it will remain square. The stitching has been put on the side closest to that outside point. Thread does take up a little bit of space. So now when this is going to be folded back, it should be the exact size of that corner. And you'll be able to tell by turning it over. I have no fabric hanging out underneath, and I have nothing tucking inside. So all 3 of those layers are exactly the same. We need to trim a seam allowance to remove this point. And try to avoid the iron, just finger press that. Now we need to put on the next side. 2.5-inch block right on top, so you're matching those 3 corners. So you've just duplicated this corner onto this corner. Then you can trim off that seam allowance. And I'm going to finger press this open. So the block has remained the same at 2.5 inches by 4.5 inches. I'm going to take the rest and make 8 of these units. We also need to make half square triangles. The one block that was on its own, which was a 4.5-inch square, is the center block. We have 2 remaining colors with 2 blocks each at 5.5 inches. And we're going to make half square triangles. The half square triangles are going to make the 4 corners. We need to match up the 2 right edges together on each of those blocks. Draw a line from corner to corner and stitch a 1/4 inch from each of those lines. Once those lines have been stitched, we can take this and cut it right in half. From here, I like to press them flat before I square them up. Throughout the project, we've been using the Quilt in a Day 6.5-inch square up ruler. It has 2 measurements on it, the regular and 1/2-inch marks. We need to square up these squares to 4.5 inches, so we're going to need the 4.5-inch mark. That 4.5-inch mark on the ruler needs to sit on top of your stitching line, not the cut line. Once that's matched up, we're going to be able to trim off the extra. It's not the seam allowance that's important, it's the stitching line. Once that's trimmed up, when this is opened up, it's going to be a perfect 4.5-inch square. When it's pressed open, there are little dog ears on the end, and we can trim them off now before we press this open. We can have this pressed to the darkest side. All of the components or pieces are done for the quilt block. We have that center square, then the 4 corners. The flying geese are going to have the points pointing out in all of these areas. And 2 flying geese will be stacked together to match up the corners. So this is the layout of the block. I know that each of these need to be stitched together, so I can just put them in a stack and stitch that pile together, so I will have 4 of these units. And with those 4 pieces, I can lay them back out. The unit is going to be put together in rows. So each of the 3 rows together, and then sew those rows together. The Rainbow Sorbet selection is now done. I'm going to continue the theme where my dark fabric is my background fabric. So I've started with my 4.5-inch center square. I've made my half square triangles at 4.5 inches for the corners, and where their dark is, I'm putting my light. Now my flying geese. They used the white background fabric. I have the dark. But there's lots of different things I can do. I can have my geese flying in. I can change so that the geese are going in different directions. Now I've created boxes, and I still can change those directions even still. So the geese are coming in together. I have 4 of these pieces and 4 corners that I can switch. I can have the geese flying out, the geese flying in, or going in the same direction. The emphasis is now on that center placement. I can have the geese flying all the way around the block. So for my variation, I'm going to have my geese flying in to the block. The scrappy variation is done, and the Rainbow Sorbet is done. And block number 9 is now done of the Rainbow Sorbet Follow Along Block of the Month. I'll put a link in the description for you. And thank you for joining me today on Sew Very Easy. Feel free to subscribe, and as always, come on back. Let's see what we're sewing next time in the sewing room. Bye for now.